welcome to What the Hex, your source for Warhammer Underworlds in under 30 predictions that are guaranteed to come true. Not all predictions are guaranteed. For What the Hex, I'm Phil, and with me as always is my co-host, Davey. How you doing, Davey?
I'm doing good. I'm in a different spot. Last time we recorded, I was using some kludged together equipment. This time in a kludged together location. So we'll see how this goes.
Hey, it worked out fine last time.
I guess so. I didn't hear anything otherwise. So hopefully, I think most of the pain will come on my end from any start stop where I've got to correct it in editing. So hopefully that's all totally invisible to the listener. So.
Yeah.
There's nothing people like hearing more about editing podcasts here. That's why they really tune in. So.
I mean, we should probably just have a whole episode about editing the podcast.
Oh yeah,
right?
Oh, so good. We might get Aaron to listen again. So.
Yeah,
actually, that's probably for the worst. This is like my last place. I was making jokes at his expense when we were on the story phase while he was on some paternity leave sort of stuff, and I assumed he wasn't going to listen, but he did. And but I feel confident that I can get my jabs in here without him picking up on them. So.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So today, if you might have been able to guess, we are going to be looking forward to a hopefully bright future of 2022 for Warhammer Underworlds. We're gonna talk a bit about where we've been, where we are, where we're going, what we think is coming up, and generally reflect on the state of Warhammer Underworlds, and it should be pretty fun. All right. So, as usual, we have a couple of topics before we dive in to our main discussion. But before we get to that, we do have a quick thing to let you all know about, and we have a survey for all of our listeners, just to be able to gather some information, see what we can be doing better, and make sure that the show is something that you're going to continue to enjoy for the next year and hopefully further into the future.
Yeah, just get a better sense of who you are out there listening and how we can make sure we're making something that you want. I think our goal is going to be to finish that up at the end of January. You'll see in the show notes a link to the survey itself.
Yeah.
It's going to be quick. It's right around 10 questions. And just bang on through that, and it'd be awesome.
Yeah, greatly appreciated. Just want to be able to make sure we're providing content that you will always enjoy. So then, our normal topics. Community shoutouts. Anything going on in the Underworlds community that you'd like to let people know about, Davey?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's some of the channels that we usually mention, but one thing we've kind of been overlooking, and these guys have been doing this for a long time, is there's a couple of we call them remote tournaments. There's the Vassal Clash. They just had their 10th one, and that is actually I think Shuby's got a big hand in running that, and then straight out of Shadespire is a webcam tournament, and Valentine I think is the one who's responsible for running that, I was just perusing on the drive. We were driving from Madison to St. Louis, about a 6-hour drive. I was flipping through deck lists on my phone, and man, it felt great to be looking at, at deck lists again. Like here's some people innovating or trying new things out. And notably for you, I think Starblood Stalkers came out on top both times. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's the same guy, RG, maybe both times. So I'll correct myself in the next step if I'm wrong. Or cut this out entirely, but Starblood top of the pile both times. So
yeah, I definitely saw the results. I don't remember which tournaments it was for. I just saw the screenshot of like top 8 or whatever.
Yeah,
and yeah, Starblood. But I thought interestingly as well is that there was no like duplicate warbands in the top 8 from what I can remember, and I think even Iron Skulls?
Oh, that was in the straight out of Shadespire. Iron Skulls were in there, which was what the hell?
Yeah, it was wild.
That's exciting. Yeah.
So I haven't looked at the lists yet, but I am very interested to see what was going on there.
I think we'll link. Well, we can link to them, but honestly, the Vassal Clash decks are over on Underworldsdb, and the straight out of Shadespire is over on Deckers.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah. So
they're all available for perusing those respective spots. So,
yeah. So
but yeah, a
definitely.
lot of big spread of warbands in both. Very cool.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, lots of cool stuff. Lots of warbands from different eras. Not exactly what I would have expected. I mean, I saw there was Hrothgorn. I saw that there was Starblood. Like things that were expected, and then obviously things that weren't. So
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah,
Um, it'll be nice. Hopefully, there will continue to be tournaments throughout the year, and we'll continue to see things change as we get
definitely.
more and more cards for this season with new mechanics and new interesting things for people to brew up.
Hmm.
All right, that's really the only things that I've seen going on as well. So I will skip straight on ahead to what the heck's is going on with you. And I will just start this off since I had nothing else to say. And so I've just been tinkering with some decks. Um, I need to test out. I have my Harrow Deep box, but I haven't actually gotten the cards out yet. I've gotten the boards and the tokens and everything, but I neglected to actually unpack the cards. So I'm going to finally slot those in, and hopefully the next time we're playing at our local league, I can test out the new stuff because I've started to realize there are a handful of cards in my old deck that don't make a whole lot of sense anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
And then I also built a Hrothgorn deck that I've just realized didn't save, so I'm gonna have to rebuild that. But it's been fun, and one of our locals, he's also been playing Hrothgorn a decent amount. I chatted deck building with him, and he seems to be enjoying it. I don't know how much Davey's enjoying it, but
I'm loving it. He's actually, the funny thing is the thing he was playing before that was the Soul Raid, and the colors of the figs are
right.
actually like right on. So he's keeping his plastic the same color. But that's actually Matt. He's painted. He's kind of sitting on the top of the pile. We're on our holiday break for the league, but we come back next week, or the next, not next week. The next session is kind of the last chance to scrabble for those top 4 spots to play in the semis.
Yeah.
So he's sitting pretty right now, as are you. I am not.
Yeah.
So as far as what the heck is going on with me, it's I'm getting shellacked with the Grimwatch, but it's fine. I'm learning some things, making some errors. I had an awesome game against Brian's Dread Pageant, which I feel like every time I play against him with those, there's really fun head games, and it's just because Dread Pageant, I like that deck. I've thought a lot about them, so I end up thinking a lot about what cards he could have, and that really kind of grinds me up a little bit. So, but that was that was a 1920. I've had some good games, but I think that was the closest I've had since the Grimwatch came back out.
Very nice.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it. I was thinking about some things I can try to do different here.
Cool.
And so along those lines, I'm thinking I managed to derail right almost as soon as it started. Derail the Hexadus, but we may return to that if I can get a few more games in with these guys enough to put an article together. So
nice.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to share the paint job. I think they look pretty sweet.
Yeah, not a promise, but a hope. How about that? So,
yeah, someday.
Yeah.
No hard deadlines.
Yeah.
All right. Well, awesome. Sounds good. So, main topic, looking ahead to next year. And before we can look ahead, we should probably understand where we are right now and sort of where we've been. So where are we, Davey? What's going on?
Well, we've had a chance for Harrow Deep to kind of settle in a little bit, right? Like there's we kind of described it as almost like a 1.5 or a 2.0 version of Underworlds with as many changes as came. And for a more complete listing of those, you can go back to previous episodes. But I think people are getting comfortable with how things go to different degrees. Myself, I'm still figuring out some of the things like board advantage, like what do I want? If I've got this kind of warband, what am I trying to do, and all that sort of thing. But as people figure that out, they're settling in some deck builds, figuring out what cards do and don't work. and we're also figuring out where some of the gaps exist, where some of the things that we might still be a little confused on or some such. But what is your sense of where it, now that the dust has settled, so to speak, where we're at, as far as, I don't know, like balance or what's strong or what's not? You got any takes?
Yeah, well, conveniently, we did just have 2 tournaments that can kind of give us some indication of where things stand a little bit more clearly. So I feel like generally, compared to some seasons, we have a pretty solid balance across the board.
Mm.
There's obviously some warbands that are hurting pretty badly right now. But I think on the whole, most of them can compete. Um, and I think that's fairly well represented, as we were just saying, and that, you know, we can have a top 8 in a tournament with no duplicates. Like,
Mm.
you know, there were times where that was not the case. I think Ghosts, Thorns, specifically, and actually, you know, just Ghosts. Let's just say Ghosts. Ghosts have been sort of a high flying warband for a while.
Yeah.
There were times where you're seeing lots of Mologs, lots of Hrothgorns, like Crushes. And it was like, okay, we kind of know what the thing is. And I don't even know if I would say I know what the thing is right now. I think
Yeah.
there were maybe for a little while some concerns that, like, oh, Hrothgorn's like the big bad on the block or whatever. But I mean, he's obviously good. I'm not going to say that he's not. I think he definitely has a leg up right now, just given his in-faction cards, some of the easy things that you can do. But, like, I don't know. Starbloods feel really good, and they obviously just won some tournaments. So hold objective play is not out of the question, and I'm glad to see that happen. When the rules first dropped, I was a little concerned about it, but yeah, in terms of balance, things feel pretty good. I don't know if you have a different sense.
Yeah, I mean, it feels good. It feels to me it's it's still. I think there's people who have played a lot more than I have. It like I just have more volume of games, and they may have a more
Mm-hmm.
cemented picture. For me, there's still a lot of discovery. We're seeing some trends. I'm seeing a lot of fighting in the middle. Some of it's because like even the whole objective players, like the thing of not being able to put an objective on the edge, like that is a
Yeah.
huge change, as it turns out. And so all the objectives are forced much more towards the middle, and it's also hard for battle lines to be separated like they were before. Now that we have like a permanent 4 offset, and it used to be not only would it be a smaller offset 4 in championship play in Dire Chasm, but before that smaller with a 3 offset doing diagonal boards. But when the last 2 seasons when lethals would come down, they would choke that off even worse.
Yeah.
And so now it's like it feels like just a interstate freeway, like of fighters able to rush at you. So that's taking some getting used to. And some of the changes have felt just like maybe a gut instinct is like, oh, this feels a little rough. Like this feels rough for hold objective, but there's always an ebb and flow. If you think back to some of the early seasons, like we used to talk about objective tokens as what was it, the Faneway portals, right? Like
Yeah, you're just using them as your jump off points.
yeah, there was an upgrade to the Faneway Crystal where it was a 1 use, and instead of moving normally, you just step onto any objective from anywhere, and that's about all that anybody cared about them. Obviously, they got much bigger particularly during Beastgrave. Although if we think about the Bills,
Yep.
he did some work with the hold 1 and 2. Like he did work with hold objective play before temporary victory was even in the mix. So it was around. But what I like right now is that there is a presence of holding. Like there's things for holding cover hexes, and there's dominant position to hold more than your opponent. There's scant resources, which one of the conditions on that is if all objectives are held. So they're still relevant in a way that means I would say they're relevant more than It's not like the least relevant they've been. You better be paying attention to them, or you're going to get burned, right? So
Yeah.
I think the warbands that are finding a way to fight and fight over those objectives, which makes sense when you look at some of these builds. The Starblood Stalkers, that's exactly what they like doing. Like they like holding some, they can leverage some fighting, so a lot of tools there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually I think I really like where it's at right now. As I lose plenty of games, but I feel like I'm learning plenty as well.
Yeah. And I think that the feature tokens, more than just objectives being important, has been kind of an eye opener to me.
Sure.
I mean, there's cases where, even just thinking back to last time I played Matt with Hrothgorn, it's like, Hrothgorn specifically making a charge onto an objective, well, it was flipped over onto its gloom side just for the defensive bonus. And it's like, well, doing that helps him to not get hit, but it also screws up my game plan.
Totally.
And so it's like, now that people care so much about the tokens before they're an objective, it also then it has this other, side to be like, oh, well, I want to be on those for defensive reasons, not even just for scoring. So that's been pretty crazy, like, to see how impactful it's been. I wasn't sure how big of a shift it would be when we first saw it, but I think in playing it, it has definitely been big, and it's definitely something that I am glad to see. I think we've kind of always wanted there to be this investment in the feature tokens and caring where you put them. Like there were times where it was like, I'm playing aggro, I don't really care, I'm just going to put them as far away from my opponent as I can, and that's all you cared about. And then that's kind of, I mean, it's a little sad that was a state that the game was in, and I think this is probably better. Of course, if it becomes like too affecting of the game, if it's like super easy to score off of just holding feature tokens or something, we could shift back the other way. But I think they kind of learned their lesson in Beastgrave, that if you swing the power too far for hold objectives, it skews the game pretty hard. So don't expect to see that again.
Yeah, I think we can expect to see that pretty tempered at this point. So
yeah, I think the only other thing that I have noticed so far in the game is that some of the changes, especially I think from the far and the far mostly in that, like, it's just not very impactful right now. There's just not a whole lot that the far is really doing. Cards being on the list that are not even championship legal notwithstanding,
right.
Like it's just not a big enough list. The things that actually are like important to most decks aren't on there. So I expect, hopefully at some point, that'll change. And then also just some of the FAQ stuff, like there's just some missing clarity. And then certain warbands I think are kind of out of the mix right now because people are feeling like the Inspire changes are pretty impactful. I personally haven't seen anyone play the Ideneth or Fire Slayers since the change, so I don't know like what it's looking like for those players, but I'm guessing it doesn't feel great.
I mean, even Grimwatch, if I trigger the Inspire, it's an end around thing. And so that first activation of the next round, I've got to be like, man, like, I have to decide, if I win the roll off, do I decide like, do I want it worse, on offense or defense? Like, I don't know. It just feels. I think my main complaint is not that, from a balance perspective, like there's deeper arguments to be made about, and I think it particularly stinks for Ideneth, who only have that second round to be inspired, right? And so to trim down what they get is feels especially bad there. On others, you just like, some warbands gain, some lose, but I think it's just not intuitive, right? Like I think it just I think what players object to is that it just feels wrong. Like it says do this at the end of the round. Do I really have to wait all the way through the first activation of the next round? And so I think it might have been requisite on our Discord. Who I'm sure other people put this forward, but I think you could potentially solve that by putting an inspire step at the end of round and at the beginning of round, and I think that kind of clears up all the remaining. Like it cleans that up. Whether they do that or not, I don't know. Like I don't really have a sense.
Yeah.
I kind of hope for it less out of a balance thing and more out of a making things feel like they are working the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. And it's a lot easy. It would be a lot easier to explain and to teach if they would clean some of this stuff up. I think there was a lot that happened with timing changes that are not very intuitive now. There's just a lot more to like try and slog through to remember, like, okay, now this, then this, then this, even though the triggers happened a lot earlier. And so it's just, there's more bookkeeping, which you just didn't really have to worry about before. It's not the end of the world. Like it's not a hugely mentally taxing change, but some clarification I think would be helpful.
Sure. Just referencing back to the FAR thing you were mentioning, my hot take is I don't think something like In the Name of the King probably needs to be restricted anymore. Like I've had games where I've just like, I guess I am chucking this. Like in the last one I played with Brian, there's the one I think I scored every other objective. That was the one I had to discard because like this one's just too hard. Which imagine somebody saying that a year or two ago. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
I know, right? And that's interesting because when I've been playing Starblood, just playing the I don't even remember what it's called. There's a generic version of it's only for 1, but it's for hold 3.
Yeah. Fleeting Primacy.
Yep. Yeah. And I haven't found it to be super difficult, although I do have to work a lot harder than I used to.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is because of how the skinks work versus how ghouls work.
I think your reactions are a big deal for that. Like they give you the chance to step onto that. You can do some stepping out of phase, which helps a lot. So
there's some speed and like you can flip things without being on top of them. So some interesting, like for this environment, I think if you're going to play hold objectives right now, at least to me, it feels like Starblood is probably the way to go. And that sounds like that's probably your experience. It's kind of difficult.
I think that's most powerful.
All right. And I think the only other thing for like where we are now, and this jumps us into like looking forward, is just sort of in terms of releases where we are. So we had Harrow Deep come out. What's it been? 2 months now? Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that's right about it.
Yeah. And we know, because they've told us the schedule for next year, that we're not expecting to see the next release until Q1 of 2022. And Q1 is a big time range.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, at earliest, it could be, a month from now.
Yeah.
At latest, it could be 3.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a pretty big range of where we're sort of sitting. And in some ways, I've been kind of feeling like I'm in a bit of a holding pattern because the card pool is so small right now that like I go to try and like think about like, oh, what could I change? What could I make better? And then I'm just like, I don't know. I guess there's like 1 or 2 cards that I could think about.
Sure.
And sort of a weird spot to be in. Because towards the end of last season, it was like, there's so many different choices. Like, let's try out a bunch of different things. And obviously at that point, we'd kind of figured out the meta, but there was still room for experimentation. And I feel like, at least from my experience now, we're not really in a very experimental area, except that there's just a lot of underlying mechanics that we probably haven't messed around with before. So in terms of card choice, it's not huge. And that is always something that I feel a little conflicted about at the end of releases, and not knowing like how long we need to wait makes that feel a little weird.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And the card pool is short for 2 reasons, I think. One is obviously it's early in a season. But the other is that the season that did not rotate, the Dire Chasm cards, there's a big chunk of those that are like very hunger related. Like, okay, well, those aren't really available. Yeah. Like those aren't accessible to most. And then there's a bunch that are Hunter Quarry associated, and those have a broader use because there's, I mean, that keyword exists in more places
Yeah.
than hunger does, and because of cards like Savage Speed and Savage Strength, which hand out the hunter keyword, so those can get a little more spread around. But even then, you know, if you've got a warband that doesn't have a way to leverage hunter quarry and doesn't have a way to use hunger, then you are struggling a little bit more. I think, or you have the potential to be struggling a little bit more. I think, you know, like an example, a counter example might be the Cunning Crew, who don't use hunger, don't have that hunter quarry thing going on, but they are so built around the new season of cover and gloom and that sort of thing that they're pretty happy with what they've got available to them.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. I think that's definitely an interesting point, that it's like, we have a similar card, like size of card pool from last rotation, but the actual available cards is much smaller.
Yeah.
Something I hadn't considered, but that is definitely true. And I mean, it is interesting that the new warbands like do really care about the new mechanics, and so they feel pretty happy with what's in the new core box. I mean, I was looking through some of the stuff in the core box when I was working on my newest version of my Starblood, and it was just like, I don't like a lot of these choices. I'd have to like really go back down to the, you know, bare bones, start over to start including some of those options. And
Sure.
I don't know, maybe it's something I should try.
Yeah.
Rather, but it just didn't feel like it like really synergized very well. So
yeah, I
definitely
mean,
interesting.
I agree with that. I think specifically since you're doing a lot of that with Starblood, I think they have the tools to kind of make tweaks rather than a complete teardown. But yeah. Hey, but leaning back to that Q1 release you're talking about, we do know that's the Pirate Ogre, right? Like,
ooh, yes, definitely.
Yeah. Gorlock Black Powder.
Gorlock Black Powder.
Yeah. So we know the Pirate Ogre is coming. Gorlock Black Powder. We know he's a brawler. He's got a heck of a card. He's got a counter mechanic. What do you think about this guy? Like, it's one of the few things we do know so far.
So just looking at his base stats, it's kind of like, oh, it's Hrothgorn, but he's got reach 2. Great. But that countering mechanic, like you mentioned, we can see enough of it on the card to know that he has these black powder counters, and that to make his gun attack, he has to remove the counter. As far as we can see, now obviously I think we can make some inferences that there's going to be ways to get the counters back, but he only starts with 1, and then you spend 1 to make the shot. Mm-hmm. So it could be a one and done. I feel like that's probably not the case, but the fact that you can't just set up shop and start shooting everybody like Hrothgorn can is probably a good thing.
Right.
And it'll differentiate, I think, the warbands pretty significantly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing it. If you were just to look at the model, the warband models side by side, you're like, these seem like very similar. There's a big guy with a gun. He's got some pets. He's got some Noblar buddies. Like, on paper, you're worried that they may be too similar, but I think there's a lot of room for them to be different. I look forward to seeing, even if he is Hrothgorn 2.0, you know, what have they learned? What have they changed about him to make that? So that'd be cool. Plus, he and Hrothgorn, you can just go run, you know, sumo wrestler belly smash each other.
That'll be pretty great.
Yeah.
Ogre battle.
Yeah.
I'm definitely interested to see what all his little minions can do. I feel like there's probably a lot more room for interesting changes to the warband from all the little guys than there are from whatever the big ogre does. And obviously, I mean, if they make him care about doing weird stuff, he could be very different. I mean,
sure.
Right now it screams aggro. It's like, well, we're just going to have this big guy with reach 2 go smash people.
Yeah.
but my guess is it won't be that straightforward. At least I hope not.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that I'm hoping we see in the next releases, is that they keep leaning into these new mechanics, different changes, and keep showing like there's more room for this game than just like run forward attack or stand on objectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So he's the one we know, and we think there's a rivals format deck dropping with, right? So
Yeah.
Illusory Might or something like that.
Yeah, I think we did see the name. What that means, I mean, it's anybody's guess. The name for Silent Menace didn't exactly tell us anything about what's inside,
Sure.
except that it's sort of loosely maybe themed on
Silent
silent
people.
people.
Yeah. Lots of
But I
insectoid
mean,
stuff in there. But
pretty sure if I just threw the cards at somebody and was like, "Tell me what ties these all together," they would be like, "They're all from the same game." I don't know.
You might presume that it is a deck that's going to lean into illusion upgrades and ways to interact with those. That's, if you had to take a wild guess, you would assume that is what that's doing. And certainly there are, you can tell from some of the cards in the core deck that there's some expectation that there will be more illusion. I mean, I'm not breaking new ground here. There's surprise, like this illusion upgrade mechanic will continue to grow, but there's some cards that currently are, if not non-functional, they're certainly suboptimal until we see more illusion upgrades come out.
So I think illusion is like a cool idea in practice, but in execution so far, it's like, well, I guess I'm getting an extra ploy that costs a glory to play. Like, that doesn't feel great.
Well, it doesn't cost a glory. That's the whole thing about the
illusion. It doesn't cost a glory. You're right. It's not it doesn't cost anything, but it doesn't stick around, which still makes it feel like maybe a suboptimal choice for an upgrade. I don't know though. I hope that they can do something cool with it, specifically to make it like not just another, shade glass / amber bone / whatever material upgrades.
Yeah.
And that they can be like, yeah, this is going to be a big part of this season, and that you have to care about these because there's going to be like scoring based off of them, or maybe based off of people not having them or something like that. It sort of forces them to the fore. I guess in terms of just what you think of the mechanic, what are your thoughts so far on illusions?
I think there's a few that are worth taking right now. There's some defensive ones in Destruction and in the Cunning Crew that give you some buffs. But other than that, there's a really terrible one for Chaos. It's
I think I remember reading it. I can't remember exactly what it does right now, but I remember being like, "And I will never play this card."
Well, I can say that it looks like Chaos of the. Although I think Cunning Crew and Destruction have maybe the most interesting ones so far. It looks like Chaos might be the faction that tries to lean into them a little bit. They have All Too Real, which is Surge Hybrid that scores if you take somebody out of action with upgrade attack action or just on a successful illusion attack action. So that one favors that. And then they have one that's they have a Gambit, like Desperate Bargain. If they become vulnerable, you can give them one upgrade from your hand or pick an illusion upgrade out of your discard pile and put that back out. And so I think that's where you might see like an illusion upgrade that is powerful, but is temporary. If you can bring it out more than once, all of a sudden, okay, now we're talking, right? Like,
yeah.
Now we got
and that's
something.
the kind of thing that I'd like to see in the game more, is like, let's start to see new mechanics. Recursion is not something that we've seen before, where you can just be like, I'm going to pull cards out of my discard pile. It's like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's been in there. There's recycled riches from Grimwatch and such, but that's where we shuffle. But it's just not been in there in any significant way. So practically speaking, it's not been there. Technically speaking, it has.
Yeah.
But the what you don't want to see is like Phantom Pain, which is it's a chaos only one, which is -1 defense, and you get +1 range on your range 3 plus attack actions. Like, man,
Yeah,
it's got to be a smoking hot ranged attack action for that to be worth your while.
and like thinking about what chaos warbands even have range attacks that you care about. It's like Allo, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, some of the casters maybe, but they are often ones that really don't want to have to sacrifice a defense dice.
Yeah, I mean, you're usually stacking defense at that point because you
Yeah,
want them to survive or you need them to.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Point being, like that's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tough example, but I think there's a lot of ways they could go with the illusions, or something that lets you reset it, or if you have to break it, you get to place it on somebody else, or just ways to play with the illusions and let you lean into the mechanic a little bit more. So
Yeah,
might be
that would
pretty
definitely
fun.
be cool.
Yeah,
And maybe not have it go like Hunger did for so long.
yeah,
I do kind of wonder, in that same vein, if we're going to end up with a warband that's like focused around illusions.
yeah. It'd be interesting.
If like their whole
I don't know.
jam will just be like, do stuff with illusions.
Yeah, what if you had like uh, another Zinch warband that feels like up their alley, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it definitely.
mm,
Yeah, them or maybe Slanesh too.
sure. Mm,
Chaosy either way, but
yeah,
like I think there'd be a lot of interesting things you could do with illusions, but I don't know. We'll
TBD.
see.
Yeah, and we said before here other mechanics that I look forward. I mean, we're just talking about, like, it'll be fun to see more cards come out that are taking a look at and how they'll shape this. So I was talking about cards that interact with gloom or cover or the delve mechanic. I think there's a lot of things can be done there. And anytime they start doing cards that are part of a set, like, I can't help it. I want to see more of those. So, like, I want
Yeah.
to see another waypoint. We've got
Mm-hmm.
the one waypoint. I want to see more of those, just because, I don't know, that's the collector instinct or something. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
and then you always hope that there's like, hey, if we've got these things and there's the set of these things, that maybe there's some payoff for collecting the whole set. And
sure,
then you can make a weird build where you're like, but of course, some people might say, well, we've done that. And every time it's not really worked out because it's been too strong or it's not been a thing at all. I think usually it falls more on the too strong side of things, and they have to restrict all the cards that are part of the set.
yeah. Not to range too broadly, but how do you feel about the silent items as far as
Yeah,
a
I mean, they're definitely interesting. I think, as you mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot more fighting in the middle of the board, and so I think the silent sword and the silent shield have more impact now than they probably did when they first came out. And I think you maybe are seeing that reflected in more people taking the silent sword. I haven't done an exhaustive check of what people are running in their decks, but my guess would be that for people who need a good weapon upgrade, they are probably taking that one.
yeah,
And then, of course, Silent Helm and Silent Ring are just easy includes for almost anybody.
sure,
I think maybe those are the ones that start to make it problematic in just that it's like, well, I'm going to throw them in anyway because reducing crits to regular successes is really strong. And
yeah.
then I can draw cards.
Well, to me, what's interesting is that it's a set that isn't crazy about, like, it isn't crazy powerful to have it as a set. Like, there's
Yeah.
individual pieces. Like, you'll see Silent Sword taken without anything else because it's kind of a good enough weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you'll see Silent Ring for people who want the card draw. And it starts to do that thing where, like, well, I've already got Silent Ring in here. Like, maybe I do maybe my defensive buff, instead of a +1 wound, maybe I make that Silent Helm, and now I can, unlock Silent Rings plus. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it has that. But there's people aren't. I've not seen people take the objective for scoring off of having Silent Relics or whatever. So,
Mm-hmm.
I, in my mind, I think it's the set that's come closest to getting it right. Although it's weird because there are some smoking hot ones in there, and there's some duds. So it's weird that it's so such a dichotomy within that one set.
Yeah, I agree. And like, there's no, like you said, there's almost no reason to stack them. Like, I almost would rather they find a balance where it's like, you could take this by itself, but it's, you really need to pair it with something else before it feels strong. And
Yeah.
then maybe don't have like a cumulative effect for all of them, because that's sort of where it tended to get out of hand. Or just having scoring being tied to holding them. It's like, hey, if you get 1 glory for every one of these and I'm holding 3, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's part of the reason you aren't seeing people run that objective, because it just doesn't have a big enough payoff.
Yeah.
Which is probably a good thing.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I can understand from a design perspective, like anytime they've tried making things that are like only effective as combos in this game, like it's been really tough to take. So
Yeah.
like early on, taking things that, like there were gambits. Was it hunting season that made everyone's a hunter in a quarry, or there was some different gambits that said like the only thing this upgrade does is make somebody a hunter or make somebody a quarry or something like that. Which meant by definition that it was like it only existed to combo with something else, and those didn't get taken a lot because it is really tough. So it's really tough to find a card that is good in combo, but good enough without combo that you're not just totally hamstringing yourself by taking it if you have that at the top of your deck and the other one at the bottom.
Yeah.
So, but again, with Mulligan, like maybe that makes some of that design easier. We'll see.
It certainly would make it easier to get your combos.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't want that. I don't know. It feels like on the one hand for upgrades they kind of lean into it, and then for ploys they kind of lean away from it. And maybe they want it that way on purpose, because at least in like other card games, usually once you can combo off, it's like, well, I did the thing, now I win. And it's like that can be a good thing in a game, but I think in a game like this, where the idea is that it's this back and forth combat oriented thing, if you can just combo off with cards and win because of that, it can kind of take some of that tension out of the combat. It's like, well, it doesn't really even matter, because as long as I can play my cards, I can still win. But that's all speculation. I could be way off base. I guess listeners, you can let me know. But that's been my feeling on that. But I'm a fan of comboing in other card games, so I would not be opposed to having more card-based play in this game. It just, I don't think, is the design direction they've decided to take.
We're doing some speculating there. Like it's not a thing we do a ton of. Let me push it even further there. What do you think this mystery warband is? Like, I think the only thing we know is that there's a little circle that's got like a lightning bolt in it.
Yeah, there's some lightning in the circle. So
yeah,
I think it sort of evokes Stormcast right away, but then it's like, well, why would they be doing more Stormcast? We just got Stormcast, and like, should we really be having Stormcast be the major focus of this warband? Or this season, I guess, not this warband.
Yeah.
But then if you dig into some of the other lore in Age of Sigmar, there are in the Beasts of Chaos, there's the Thunderscorn.
Yeah.
And they are these like, well, they're called dragon ogres, and it's kind of what you'd think. They're like centaur ogres, but their lower body part is like a dragon, without wings. And one or two of those as a warband would be pretty cool, I think. And they lean into lightning as their like jam. Some of their lore is that like they get healed by lightning and they can call storms.
Totally.
So I'd be super about that. I've definitely seen some chatter of people thinking that it's like something with zombies and using like necromancy and raising zombies, but I don't feel like that really matches the lore of Age of Sigmar. Like, we're not doing stuff Frankenstein style. We're not using electricity to raise people from the dead, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's an interesting take, though.
Yeah.
I would say my hope is the Thunderscorn way. I can think of like one or two dragon ogres, and maybe if they're like really using it, kind of like the thing they did with the Wild Hunt, where here's a faction that could at some point become a full thing in AOS, or maybe not.
Right.
Thunderscorn as a faction basically has one plastic kit of the dragon ogres and one resin kit of the Shaggoth, and that's it. I wonder if it could expand out where there was somehow like little ones as well, or bipedal ones, or you know what I mean, like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
maybe they have just beastmen running along with them, or maybe there's something more Thunderscorn y, and doing some of our story phase stuff. It's not like they're all over the place, but you notice like, hey, there's this Thunderscorn peaks are mentioned over here, like in some of the discussion with what Kragnos and that sort of thing. Like,
Yep.
well, they could have called that anything. They decided to mention Thunderscorn again, so I wonder. It's not as like it's not as like it's not a big as push as they did when they were getting ready to like release Overlords or different things like that. So it's not as obvious, but that's my hope. I'd be disappointed. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Annihilators or some other thing.
Yeah.
Figure from the new Stormcast range that hasn't been released. But that'd be a weird season, right? Like Stormcast, Destruction. That's your 4 Warband season.
Yeah. Well, so we'd have, I guess, to look for even further forward in Q2, we do know that there is going to be another core box as well.
Yeah.
Because so there could be more factions in there that aren't represented yet if they choose to go the Stormcast route. But I agree. I think it would feel a little weird for the first 4 releases to both be Order and Destruction.
Yeah.
Even though it does kind of match with what their story is doing in Age of Sigmar, I don't think that it needs to or even should follow the story of Age of Sigmar for releases in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I maybe it'll be something to do with like ocean storms or something like that. Like
Sure.
We're in this we're in Harrow Deep.
Yeah.
We had the pirate ogre, so maybe it'll be something themed around the season a little stronger. So
yeah, I mean a new Ideneth. I mean it'd be close together, but I mean 2 Ideneth warbands wouldn't be a bad thing. We've gotten already multiple Khorne warbands, many greenskins. It's like, yep, sure, let's get some more elves in here, and it would be fitting for the watery depths to have more watery fighters. And maybe have like a mage this time around or something.
Yeah, totally. What you mentioned another Corset. That's breaking the trend that we've done in the past. How do you feel about a Corset representing the 5th and 6th warbands of this? I don't know if it's a new season or if it's a season that has more than one Corset. I don't like. There's a lot of questions to be sorted out here. Like, how does this impact rotation? All that.
I am also very curious about those same questions. I would hope that it's not a new season, because if we start shifting to 6-month seasons instead of 1 year, that would feel really awkward, I feel like, because you'd only get to play with cards for a year at a time.
Yeah, I would be surprised if they changed it that drastically. But.
Yeah. So my guess would be that it's going to just be a way to introduce new boards and introduce maybe some new, I don't know, tokens or some other new thing into the landscape without having to have like a separate pack that they've done in the past. It's always felt a little strange to be like, hey, here's some, new cards and boards that you can use and maybe a new token pack, but then it's tied to Arena Mortis. And then we kind of end up in this weird balancing state where it's like, so I mean, I guess I want to pick that up because I want to have all the stuff to play with, but then 90% of it or more maybe is stuff that you really would never use in a regular game of Underworlds. But the few things that you would use, it's like, wow, some of this stuff is maybe wasn't intended or maybe wasn't anticipated to be used in this way.
Yeah. I think my first reaction on here was like, wow, it seems like kind of a pricey thing to put in the middle. But when you take a step back, like, it is just a little bit more than the cost of 2 warbands, right? Like, so if you think of it as like you're just buying those 2 warbands together, then it's pretty close. So,
and if if it comes with 2 new boards as well,
Mm,
I mean, it'll still, the core boxes, if you really break down everything that you're getting, the core boxes are always the best value
mm,
in a release season. But it's usually because we're introducing like a whole new rule book, and they have to get everybody on, like, here's your entry point. But if you're in the middle of a season, like, hopefully there's no new rule book. So like, I mean, you do still get value out of it. It
yeah.
just feels a little strange. Um, I guess there's a maybe part of doing that is that also gives a natural point at which to do a rebalance.
Mm, yeah.
So they can kind of say, all right, core box is followed by FAR and FAQ updates.
Sure.
And then it's just like, when are we going to get the next thing? When is this going to happen? And they can just say next core box.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that's actually going to be the case. It feels like maybe something they would do to be like, here, we can like have a natural plan for where to time things.
Hmm.
Even if maybe that means we don't get appropriate hot fixes to actually
Yeah. And
patch some of
we're
the
maybe
problems.
seeing
But
some of that with some of the other games where like AOS 3.0 was promised its winter update, and on the first official day of winter, they dropped it. So maybe they are
true.
trying to structure like that a little bit more across their games. So
Yeah. And I mean, I guess if we can get to a point where there's no longer a question of like, well, how long is it going to be this time?
mm,
Because obviously this past year, and there were a whole lot of extenuating circumstances, but like,
sure,
we went a long time without any answers from
right,
Games
right.
Workshop.
And the
And
most disheartening thing was just not knowing how long you were going to wait. And I think that's why there's some like with this FAR that came out and had some odd inclusions on it, and you're like, well, okay, like that's fine, but now I don't know. Am I waiting for 90 days, or am I waiting for a year and 90 days before I see another one? And
yeah,
so I think just knowing, I think just a little known structure would go a long ways, and seeing where they're going with other games, I think there's a good chance we might see something like that for us for some of the reasons you were mentioning.
yeah. And I guess maybe something we didn't touch on enough, but like, there are still some answers that we need from the FAQ that weren't there. So I don't know. Hopefully we don't end up in a state like that again. And I don't suspect that we will, because they probably won't introduce a sort of like bolt-on mechanic like primacy again. But who knows? Maybe we will. But either way, like, I'm hoping that we hear more from them, and like you said, we can expect some similar patterns to the other games and have a structure to their releases. And I think that, assuming that things go smoothly, that we should see some in-person tournaments coming back. And if there are in-person tournaments, we definitely are going to have to, like, it should be an impetus to say, hey, can we get some answers for this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's
Yeah,
directly impacting tournaments if you don't
sure,
answer the questions.
sure.
And I guess in that vein, like, what do you, I mean, as of right now, the next big tournament for us, or I guess anyone in the US, I think, is Adepticon. Assuming that it happens, what are your thoughts on an in-person tournament? Do you think it's gonna be able to happen? Do you think people will go?
I think there's still a lot of. I mean, as of the time of recording, we're still figuring out what exactly Omicron is going to mean
Yep.
for folks.
Yep.
So I think there's just a really big question mark over it. Um, and it could be, it could work out. It might not. I mean, we might have the next variant by then, and that'll be all the different. So who knows? But I don't think it's out of the question that we would be in an environment where we'd be able to do something like that. But also wouldn't be shocked if we weren't able to, or if it was hesitantly attended. Depending on how
Yeah.
things shake out.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at too. Is it feeling like, on the one hand, if there's these in-person tournaments, it might, give this driver to be say, okay, let's make sure that we can keep pace to the rules questions. But then also, like, there's so much. Uh, there's so many unknowns that it's like, can we even assume that the current tournament questions even have a whole lot of merit if there's not a large enough presence of the community?
Mm.
So at least for me, I'm more just looking forward to continuing to be able to play in our local league and trying to just keep it small and keep it safe and just have lots of fun playing the game. I mean, big tournaments are great. It was super fun the last time we were at Adepticon, but I kind of agree that like we just kind of need to be in a holding pattern still for now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that sentiment. Like, I look forward to a big event. There's people I'd love to meet up with. Some of them I've only met online or only talked to like over Discord or that sort of thing. It'd be awesome to see them in person. And that would be the biggest thing for me about a big thing like that. I think we both know that, when it comes to actually competing in it, I'll probably flinch at the last minute and take some like Godsworn hunt level thing and, go 2-2 or something.
Dark horse.
Yeah, I can't resist the lure. But seeing those people and seeing, seeing people that I've met and, through this podcast or through other online communities would be really awesome. Seeing some of our other friends from, Path to Glory or Battle for Salvation or, any of the other creator channels out there, it'd be fun to see them. I feel like, since the last Adepticon that we got to actually go to, there's been a whole lot of things that changed, so
yeah.
It'd be fun to be able to capitalize on that. But like you said, in the meantime, like, we are fortunate to have like a thriving local scene for the game. And it's awesome to go and play. This last week, I only played the one game because I was just kind of chatting with a couple of people there. We didn't get started with ours right away, but I had a great game, and I really enjoyed like listening to people playing their games and hearing about the cool moments and just seeing people enjoying the game. And I loved being able to like think about it afterwards. Like, okay, like I lost again with Grimwatch, but like, what did I learn? Like, what am I learning about what's the next thing I want to try if I want to try and get better at these guys or at this style of like horde style objective play. Like, if I was going to keep working on it, what would be the thing? Like that, those sort of thought cycles are what like engage me, keep me interested in the downtime, and then the enjoyment of the interactions and the cool player community that we have is what makes it enjoyable on the day. So that's something I look forward to, and I'm glad we've got it. So even if the real big things don't open up quite yet, we're lucky to have that. But for the people out there that the big events are really kind of what they get to do, who may not have that local community fully developed, I hope, especially on their sake and on our own, that those get to be like a safe and fully participated thing pretty soon. So.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a lot of looking forward, a lot of talking about sort of near and far future thoughts of where things stand and where we'd like to see things go. Any other things that you'd want to touch on? Any other just general thoughts about the game as a whole?
No, just that like we joked how we didn't really do anything in particular for our 3 years as a podcast, but just another chance to reflect back on it. Like it's the game's gone through a whole bunch of different things. It's been fun to have this as an outlet to like think about it and promote the game, and just kind of try and get other people excited or thinking about a game that we are excited about and like to think about, and to be able to share that. So if you've been listening the whole time or only just recently, I'd just say thanks for listening during that time, and we appreciate whatever level you are able to engage with the podcast and the community as a whole, whether you're a content creator yourself or whether you're just binging this and thinking about playing your first game or something like that. Like there's a full spectrum that we end up talking to one way or the other sometimes, and just want to wherever you're at, thank you for being part of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a crazy year. I'm sure everyone's been feeling that as well, and having this community. Not just because we make a podcast, but because it's cool to just be able to engage about a game that we all like, even if we can't always do it in person, has been pretty great. And having sort of the level of engagement and creativity and discussion that people tend to have around this game has allowed for a lot of just very fun and informative sort of thought-provoking things to read, listen to, look at, for people who share their painting, chat about deck building ideas, and that's pretty awesome to then be able to contribute with our own pieces. So I definitely want to just say that I feel pretty humbled by the fact that even after all this time, that people still seem to enjoy listening to what we have to say about the game, and that it seems that the game continues to be popular enough that people are making a point of, when they join up, seeking out these types of resources, and that we can be one of those resources for people. And hopefully we can continue to do that for you folks.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. If you would like to let us know about this episode, if you think anything of the show in general, you can always reach out to us at WTHcast on Twitter, and then also whatthehexcast@gmail.com. And fairly recently now, you can also rate our show on Spotify. So if you'd like to just throw a rating on there, just let us know, and potential new players who want to see what you think of the show, that would also be great. That'd be a great way to just quickly share feedback, and I'll let other people know about it.
Those algorithms are not generally public information, and it's not like we have any insight, but if you drop us a 5-star on it, then it helps other people find it, and that helps grow the community in its own way. I'll say this: if you don't think we earned a 5-star, do me this one favor: drop us a line. Tell me where we're falling short. Give us a chance to fix that, and we'll we'll work on that. And then you rate us how you feel you need to rate us. So, but like I said, if you get a chance, that'd be awesome. And if you have, if you use a different podcatcher that allows for ratings, do it on there.
Definitely. And as as Dave was saying, if you've got thoughts about the show, if you've got suggestions, or just general ideas about the show, we are going to have that survey. We will have links to it once it's available. It shouldn't take more than just a couple minutes to fill out. So it would be super helpful for us just to get some more focused feedback. As always, if you would like to hear more about the Mortal Realms, maybe you want to go hear a little bit more about Thunderscorn and some of the other Beasts of Chaos stuff, like we mentioned today, you can head over to themortalrealms.com. We've got a couple other podcasts in our sort of group. You got Story Phase, you got Path to Story, and the Dogs of Warcry, all putting out some cool stuff for all the different aspects of Age of Sigmar. Just game focused, story focused, all sorts of cool stuff. Coming up next, I don't know. Do we have a coming up next?
I think we're going to keep this one open because we don't know exactly what's going to drop when. We've got some options. So if we'll come back at you, maybe a deep dive on a Warband. Maybe we'll get you another live deck build or a battle report. Have Phil and I go at it and talk about what we've figured out.
Yeah,
maybe I can give you a live battle report of me losing with Grimwatch.
Sure. All right, and then our recommended listening for today. What have you got, Davey?
Yeah, this because we threw a lot of information out there, and so thematically, I'm going to say "Lies I Chose to Believe," and that's by John Moreland. So
nice,
good song. Check it out.
So that'll do it for today. For What the Hex, I've been Phil.
I've been Davey.
But I completely forgot to introduce myself.